People who work for airlines, what are secrets passengers don't know? My sister is a flight attendant. She says after she tells everyone to turn off all electronics, she goes to the back and pulls out her phone and starts texting. Some airlines don't pay pilots or flight attendants for flights that cancel, which doesn't sound so bad until you start thinking about the safety implications of it. A little short on the rent this month? Then I don't see that hydraulic leak. I can't afford to have the flight cancel. Child needs to see the doctor. Maybe I don't report the torn up carpet that you might trip on in an evacuation, because carpet takes too long to replace, so the flight would cancel. Not saying this happens all the time, because most crews are true professionals and can put their job ahead of their paycheck, but it happens enough to give you the goosebumps. Throw in some seriously low pay, sub $20k a year for many first year pilots, and you've got a subtle incentive to overlook safety issues. Bring in an opened bag or box of chocolates for the flight crew, especially long flights. They'll treat you like a king for the whole flight. I was a ramp agent for Delta. A lot of freight gets shipped on commercial flights. One of these items were always called HR on the radios. HR was an abbreviation for human remains. Some people die far away from where they want to get buried. They're packed in wood-framed boxes, so you would never know what was inside except by the strange shape of them. They were a itch to handle. People wait a bit, add a casket and shipping container, and you're looking at anywhere from 250 to 400 pounds. Also, the bin doors tend to be pretty narrow. Wrestling these things out of the plane was always a giant pain in the ass. HR in the middle bin of a mad dog, MD-90, duck that. TLDR, if you hear about an hour while flying Delta, it means there's a dead body in cargo. Edit, MD-90, it's been a while. Aerospace fastener production here. Nobody ever asks what is actually holding the plane together. Don't worry about it. You are able to unlock airplane lavatories from the outside. There is usually a lock mechanism concealed behind the no smoking badge on the door. Just lift the flap up and slide the bolt to unlock. I used to be an aircraft mechanic. You'll be amazed at what you don't really need to make a plane fly. You can bring mini bottles of liquor through TSA. If you want to save some dough but still booze a mile high, bring a few along. Posted this in a similar thread a while back. I have a friend who's a commercial pilot. Around 5 years ago he was doing a flight from LA to Tokyo when an anonymous caller phoned in a bomb threat while they were over the middle of the Pacific. Apparently they have procedures for this kind of thing, but there was nothing anyone could do in this situation except stay calm and not alert the passengers, obviously. He said for the rest of the flight every bump of turbulence made his adrenaline spike. They took this case especially seriously because there was a group of foreign dignitaries sitting in the first class cabin. If you'd give us flight attendants your magazines, we will love you. Hey OP, you might have wanted to put a serious tag on this. My dad's been an airline pilot for almost 20 years, and apparently planes get struck by lightning all the time. Also, if a passenger is causing a scene in the jetway, he can refuse to let them on and take off without them. This will get buried, but there are cracks all over the turbine blades. Crack growth is a pretty well characterized science, and part of the point of inspections every X flights is to make sure the cracks haven't grown to a point where they're actually concerning. They'll take a look at them, measure them, and if they think they still have, say, 2,000 hours until failure, they'll send the plane back out and check it in a few hundred hours of use. When a plane is landing at night, they dim the interior lights in case you need to evacuate upon landing. Your eyes are already adjusted to the darkness, so you'll be able to see better once outside the plane. Women, if you pack a toy in your bag, take the batteries out, because if I'm loading your bag and I hear it vibrating, I have to tell my lead. Then my lead has to come pull you off the aircraft and you have to open your bag and turn off your toy in front of a bunch of giggling grown-ass men. When you experience a hard landing in bad weather, it wasn't because of a lack of pilot skills, but it is in fact intentional. If the runway is covered in water, the airplane has to touch down hard in order to puncture the water layer and prevent aquaplaning. Mobile electronic devices won't really bring an airplane down, but they can be really annoying to pilots. Just imagine sitting in the flight deck descending to your destination and hearing the interference of a 100+ cell phones picking up a signal. I have missed a clearance or two that way. The air you breathe on an airplane is actually compressed air taken from the engines. A large portion, 25% to 50%, is blown in the flight deck. The rest is for the passengers. The air leaves the airplane via a small hole in the back of the fuselage. The captain has almost limitless authority when the doors are closed. He is allowed to arrest people, write fines and even take the will of a dying passenger. At most airlines the only difference between the captain and the co-pilot is their rank. They divide the workload fairly and switch the roles of pilot flying and pilot non-flying each flight. Your bags are thrown and dropped very frequently. Then they are put in tiny cargo compartments, where 50-150 other bags are set on top of them. Then they slide around until you land. Then they are dropped and thrown and finally, you retrieve them. Not airline secret but airport. You know that first class line of security? Yeah. That's an airline thing, not TSA. Economy passenger? TSA doesn't care. Step right up. The air inside the jet engine of an airplane is hotter than the melting point of any component of the engine. Those weird flaps on the wings have nothing to do with flying. They're for knocking the gremlins off. The tail rotor diameter of a Robinson A-22 helicopter is 3 feet 6. This is because that was as wide as Frank Robinson's kitchen oven would go, where he had to bake the first rotor. It hasn't been changed. Aluminium, unlike steel, doesn't have a lower stress limit for fatigue cracking. In layman's terms this means that whenever you apply a load to it, it cracks. Planes are designed so that under normal loads the cracks are microscopic, but they'll always be there and they grow with repeated stress cycles, that is. Every time the plane is flown the cracks grow. Maintenance crews are responsible for knowing where they are on each individual plane and tracking their growth. Source is my mechanical engineering professor from college days. If you have United miles and have enough for business class saver award and Asiana is going your route, take Asiana over United. Their planes are mainly 2 cabin while United is typically 3, so you can get first class seats for 35,000 miles instead of 100,000 on United. Their service is superb and the food is awesome. You get better service if you ask for a comment card in the beginning of the flight. Took my son a flight recently. If you're traveling with a child, ask the crew if they can meet the pilot. Made his flight, and also eased his fear of flying. Don't worry Dad, Captain Miller's got us. Pilot hat hasn't left his side since. If you are a US citizen entering the US at passport control, and you see that the line for foreigners is shorter than the one for US citizens, you can go through it. Source: I said hi to the security lady directing us. She suddenly became friendly and she told me so. On some 747s, Air France and possibly others, the upper deck economy class seats have a little extra room and storage on the window seats. They have a tiny bit more legroom to hike. Air France used to block these off for picking seats ahead of time unless you have a higher tier card. If you check in a bit early you can get them. It's so probably been mentioned, but seatguru.com is the resource for checking seats for whatever steel you're flying on. Edit. Additionally, if you order any kind of special meal, you get your meal first. Diabetic meals, low salt, kosher, vegetarian, whatever. Armrests, island window seat. Run your hand along the underside of the armrest. Just shy of the joint you'll feel a button. Push it, and it will lift up. Adds a ton of room to the window seat and makes getting out of the aisle a hell of a lot easier. Worked as a ramp agent for Ryanair in London Stansted. Every day without fail a bag would come down from the check-in desk through the conveyor system, hit the bottom and start vibrating. Everyone knew why and the source of the vibrating had to be found. 100% of the time a dildo. This means reading the passenger's name and flight information and boarding the plane to request a passenger to step off the plane and open their bag with around 6-7 other ramp agents watching. It was the only fun we had, as they opened the bag and pull out all sorts of different vibrators. Thinking back to it, it was kind of evil haha but definitely funny as hell. My advice ladies and gents, don't leave the batteries in your vibrator when going on holiday, or you could be next. Also, pack fragile items well, that is, Guitars and golf clubs. Ramp agents. Not me, however, enjoy throwing other people's valuables around. 10-year airline customer service professional checking in. Here are a few tips. 1. The FAA regulation on carry-on bags is actually an airline-specific choice. They set their own requirements and committed to policy, and they are then held accountable through audits. FAA. TSA. Internal. For compliance. 2. Customer service agents will bend over backwards to help you when you take the time to be respectful and courteous. I cannot tell you how many times I have broken a rule or made an exception for someone just because they were nice about it. 3. If you want to bring booze on board, just ask the flight attendant to pour for you. This is so they have control of your consumption and can cut you off if you start to get lispy. The altitude affects your blood oxygen levels and you will get drunker faster. Thank you are used to at sea level. The rule is 1 on the ground equals 2 in the air. 4. We are required by law to offer up to $1,300 in a check if we involuntarily deny you boarding due to an overbooked flight. The offer for volunteers will always continue to go up. It is based on the fare you paid and the amount of time it takes us to get you to your destination as opposed to when you would have arrived had you been able to take the flight you had purchased. Edit. Words. Attendance. Can you tell when someone has just masturbated in the toilets? Is there a particular look of shame on the face of those who do? I work for the cargo side of an airline. You'd be surprised what is in the hold beneath your feet. All sorts of dangerous goods such as flammable compressed gas, corrosive materials, and toxic substances. Supercars. I regularly book these on flights for Aris, Aston Martin, Lamborghini and even a Bugatti. Hazardous and non-hazardous biological samples. Bull semen. Horse semen. Samples of deadly viruses and blood samples. Animals. Dogs. Cats. Lizards. Horses, and we shipped a baby gorilla for a breeding program in Brazil. Food. I had to book 1 carton of ice cream from the UK to Dubai. Pastries. Chocolate. Fruit and vegetables. Weird stuff. 300 tons of sand from Copenhagen to Dubai and weapons. You're safer than you think. Best upgrade trick if you have no frequent flyer status and nothing else going for you that endears you to the airline. When you book, pre-select a seat as close to the rear of the airplane as you can that has a window or aisle seat reserved. This applies to 3-seat row aircraft, which most aircraft are, but also has no middle seat reserved. Reserve the window or aisle that is not reserved. Keep checking your seat assignment even until the day you depart and make sure, if possible, that you have the most rearward aisle or window seat with the other seat filled but the middle empty. When you get on the plane, keep checking out families that are heading towards the back and look for those that are trying to sit together. Families don't travel by air often and are usually not really adept at air travel, reserving seats, etc. You can initiate or they might. Either way, say I wanna help but I'm not sure if it's okay with the airline. Excuse me, flight crew? Yep, this family wants to sit together, but I'm not sure if it's okay to swap seats as I have an assigned seat. When the FAR says okay, ask if you can move to first business. Very nicely. At this point, your options will be 1. Go to first class. Ding. Ding. 2. Be the good guy anyway and swap. 3. Say never mind and keep poor man's first class, empty middle seat, depending on your personal feeling about the situation. Done this hundreds of times. There's no way to lose. Even if you just wanna be the good guy and give a good seat up to a family that wants to sit together. Former Lufthansa cargo agent here. Do not ever drink water on an aircraft that did not come from a bottle. Don't even touch it. The reason being the ports to purge, lavatory it and refill the aircraft with potable water are within feet from each other and sometimes serviced all at once by the same guy. Not always, but if you're not on the ramp watching, you'll never know. Oh, and I forgot something. If there are people who get deported, accompanied or unaccompanied, they are put in the last row of seats. If they are accompanied, there will be some sort of air marshal sitting next to him. If they don't pose a substantial threat, they will be unaccompanied and look like regular passengers. Only thing is they usually enter through the back doors of the plane. So, if you're sitting next to a sketchy person in the last row, it might be a deported criminal refugee. Who else read every post on this thread? Your pilots are tired, underpaid, and overworked. I mean, legally your pilot might be on almost 16 hours of straight work. This does not include getting up, showering, van ride to airport, TL, DR. I have flown and landed an airplane with passengers having been awake for at least 18 hours since I had rest. Apparently my parents lied. The pilot won't pull this plane over right now if you don't stop misbehaving, mister. Not an airline worker, but learned this through 20/20. Hear me out. Stewards and stewardesses don't get paid until they get on the plane. Any delays, they're just hanging out in the terminal as well for free. If the flight gets cancelled, no pay, nothing, until they are on the plane. Edit. Okay, I get IT. Not until the doors are closed. Don't work for airlines. But in economy with Cathay on long flights towards the latter parts of the nighttime you can ask for cup noodle ice cream. If you're having cup noodles though, be prepared to be asked to be temporarily relocated to the back, assuming it's not a full flight, as once the cup noodling phase starts, there's no stopping the aroma from spreading across the entire cabin and inciting the great cup noodle feast and making 2 poor flight attendants make 14 cup noodles. I'm a flight attendant. Not really any secrets that haven't already been said, but when we are in the aisles serving drinks, you should realize I try to wait until we are out of the aisles to get up and go to the lab or whatever. Also, if we are in our jump seats because of the turbulence, I would suggest you be in your seats as well. Some people don't realize that we have our own sleeper cabin on some planes. On long international flights it's great to have a spot to rest away from passengers. I worked for a bush plane company, and we always know when you are lying about your weight. When I would do weight and balance, I was instructed to add an extra 10 pounds to every passenger's weight, and to add 20 pounds to any passenger I believed was lying about their weight. My GF is a flight attendant. No one tips flight attendants. If you give your thigh a fiver with your first drink, you'll probably drink for free the rest of the flight. Landings are nothing more than controlled crashes. Pilot friend quote. Most airliners in service today can land themselves and have been able to do this for decades. Many aircraft and airports are certified for essentially zero visibility autolands when using what's called a category IIILS approach. Here's a pretty good depiction of what it's like from an A320 cockpit. You basically don't see the runway until the wheels are about to touch the ground. The computer callouts you hear are the actual height above the ground from the radio altimeter. Confirmed. Most large commercial aircraft can fly with only one engine if needed. Source: me, the pilot. My mother-in-law, now retired for over 25 years, used to be a typist with the Canadian Air Transportation Safety Board. She used to type up all of the accident reports. She would only fly Air Canada because of what she had typed. But that was a long time ago. Regional airline pilot here. You may have bought a ticket on Delta, United, or American, but chances are you'll be flying on a subcontractor. That means the pilots have a fraction of the experience, training, and pay of the big mainline carrier. Also, I don't get paid enough to care if you make your connection. Most of the time we fly slower than normal to make more money. The only time we fly fast is if ATC tells us to, or if it's the go home leg. Avionics tech here. Wires in the fuel tanks. When there are 180 seats on a plane, airlines usually sell 183-185 tickets anticipating people who miss their flights, and this usually works out great, until you are the unlucky dude whose plane was already full at arrival. You bought a ticket but you cannot board the plane. When this happens, the airline is legally obliged to book the next flight for you for free and offer sleeping arrangements. Also, luggage gets thrown. What you see on the tarmac when you are inside the terminal is nothing compared to what happens at the baggage belts in the basement. And you can't blame these baggage workers. They have to bust their spine all day, so it's best to hold that luggage for the least amount of time. This means that if I had to unload a suitcase that was stored at the top of an old, I'm not going to gently lay it down on the belt. I pull it out and let it drop on the belt from that height. So never put expensive things in your luggage that breaks easily, like laptops etc. On the other hand, if your luggage fails to arrive with you on time, you have the right for a compensation. I believe it was something of €200, so it's quite high. One more. The airline only makes about €1 something of profit per sold seat on a continental aircraft, and they usually don't make any profit out of smaller flights at all. The main reason why big airlines fly those smaller flights is not for profit but to get passengers on the bigger flights. How to save literally hundreds on your next flight. The biggest thing is, if you need to go on a flight, make a connection. The price difference can be hundreds if not thousands. Don't believe me? Try going Cleveland, Claire, to NY LaGuardia, LGA. It is usually $500 for the round. Now do the flight out of Pittsburgh, Pitt. Only an hour and a half drive away. $150 round for the same exact flight plus one leg. The reason is the hub and spoke system. By taking the direct flight only, you are taking up a seat that a connecting passenger could have. Plus convenience. So if you have a small airport not too far away, go through there. It's one of the biggest dirty little secrets of the airline industry. Source: I'm a pilot, aviation enthusiast, and I have a friend that takes that route once a month and refuses to go directly out of Cleveland and will drive to Pitt to save the money. 1/2 of pilots sleep while flying, and 1/3 of the time they wake up to find their partner asleep. Pilot here. Having to turn off electronics on a plane is totally useless. Secret: all of the stuff in Sky Mall can be purchased on the internet for much less money. At night, for takeoff and landing, we dim the cabin lights. This is so that in case of an unplanned emergency, everybody's eyes are already somewhat adjusted to the darkness. The sad thing is that none of these plane hacks will ever work with the airline I fly with most of the time, Ryanair,